for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Folks, have you heard the expression, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? Let me repeat that. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, what does that have to do with this special edition of Sam Lesante Show? A little later on in the show, we'll talk about that. My guest today is Hazleton Police Chief Frank DeAndrea, no stranger to the Sam Lesante Show. But folks, you know, we talk about information. You know, you hear a soundbite of something and people draw a conclusion from a soundbite until they hear, as Paul Harvey said, the rest of the story. And there's a lot to be said about what's happening in the city of Hazleton, and we could ditto this with towns like Monroe City, Frackville, Shenandoah, St. Clair, you name it, Tamaqua, hometown, Whitehaven, Cunningham, you name it. You could ditto what we're going to discuss today. Keep in mind what I said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Frank, thanks for coming on the Sam Lesante Show.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Happy New Year to you. All right, a lot of things have happened. I'd like the community as well as surrounding communities to be informed what's happening. And so last year was a challenging year, as every year is in police work.
Yeah.
Let's do like a sort of review, if you will, of what happened last year.
Best year ever for me as the chief of police in the Hazleton Police Department. I have the feeling that I will say that every year at the end, that it was my best year. First and foremost, the men and now women of the Hazleton Police Department are our greatest asset and the thing that truly shined the most in 2014. I've said this all the time, my hat is off to them. The resolve that they showed and the medal through 2014 truly needs to be recognized. The Hazleton Police Department handled over 30,000 calls for service last year.
30,000.
30,000. That is the most calls for service ever documented in the history of the Hazleton Police Department. We continue to do that with less than the number of police that we had in 2007. So I say that that is a huge undertaking and a huge accomplishment. And they do so on a daily basis, more efficient. The reports are done, our response times are down, our reports are in a timely fashion. It just truly shows the caliber of the police that are working in Hazleton Police Department. My hat is off to every one of them. Thank you for everything that you do. Second, in 2014, we were able, through federal seizure money, to bring on a second canine, adding another canine to the canine unit.
What does that mean?
That's huge. It's huge for a lot of reasons. First of all, a canine is a cop. That's an extra police officer at a less or limited expense. But it's so big for the community to see a canine on patrol, and you as a police department and as a community gets much more respect. Trust me when I tell you, when a dog, it's one thing for a cop to show up, it's another thing for a police officer with a dog to step out of a car, because immediately, not the good people who want to pet the dog and talk to the dog, but the criminals immediately snap to attention. All that a canine handler ever needs to do is yell, "Come out or I'm releasing the dog." There are very few criminals who are willing to allow the dog to go running into the house after them. And usually it ends up allowing us to keep our patrol officers safer, our community safer. We're able to make more arrests without any type of altercation, physical altercation between the police officers, and that's huge. Prior to me becoming chief, in the first year that I was chief, before we issued tasers, we had averaged a cop a month go out on workers' compensation for having to fight in some type of fight with the public, whether that means that they were scuffling with an arrest. We add tasers, it's no different than having a canine. The public doesn't want to even think about fighting or being involved in an altercation with the police anymore. So adding a canine, it's part of perception too. Anytime that I'm able to have a canine officer deploy into a crowd at FunFest or walk or train, the community feels safer. They recognize, hey, those cops are out there and they have canines. So that's huge for us. We also added another canine vehicle. Through federal seizure, we purchased a vehicle, and it's outfitted. You can't tell it apart from the new fleet because perception is huge. And so what I do is, if we buy a used car, we get it painted and striped and patched so that it matches the fleet. And we no longer look like Hogan's Heroes. We now fit the part of the professional police department that we are. So that's another big thing that we added. I had mentioned in passing, we now have a female officer. The first officer in the history of the Hazleton Police Department to actually be out physically working patrol. That resource is huge for the community. It helps us in doing interviews when sometimes people would rather speak with a woman than a man. It helps us with prisoner searches. It just helps us. A female officer is one more tool in our law enforcement arsenal, and we are so happy to be a department that has added females. I look to adding in 2015 another female. She's already been approved by City Council. We're in the last stages of the background investigation, and so very soon we should be adding female officer number 2. The surveillance camera project is up and running. The new camera system is state-of-the-art. It's phenomenal. It's protecting and covering some high crime areas, the Alter Street Business District, 15th and Alter Street, Wyoming and Green Street, where we've had homicides, shootings, stabbings on that corner, some serious traffic accidents. We're covering some critical areas in the city. We're looking to continue to expand that.
Is the public aware of that?
Yeah.
Because remember we had talked about billboards and saying you watch, right. Be careful, you're being watched. And so it's like a deterrent.
Well, you're very fortunate in the fact that this is the first time I've spoken publicly about the new system, because it was only the end of December that we accepted it from the vendor. We had some workarounds that we had to solve with PPL providing.
So it's up and running right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So and that's great. So the point is that letting people know,
right.
that we have the surveillance cameras out there, okay? Because that perception thing is
Sure.
which is very important to me.
But back to being a great year, in 2014, the Hazleton Police Department added a chaplaincy program, and we added a psychiatrist to the department staff. That's huge. It's huge because the stress that the men and women of the Hazleton Police Department are under today it's almost unimaginable. And so my concern is not only for your physical health and your physical well-being, but your mental and spiritual health and well-being. But more so than that, we're trying to be much more involved with the community that we serve. And part of that community is a spiritual community. And so if we're able, when we go to a fatal accident, to reach out to our chaplaincy program and say, it's headed by Father Thomas Capelloni. We reach out to Father Capelloni and say, Father, here's a family. They just lost their 20-year-old daughter. They're this denomination. Please reach out to the family and see what kind of spiritual help they might need. The families themselves recognize, wow, that police department really went above and beyond. And that's what policing and community policing is all about. I look at the automation efforts of where we're at. We're more efficient, we're timelier. And the most important thing that I'd like to stress, other than the people themselves, it's these people of the City of Hazleton's police department that have made us for 3 years in a row under budget, every line item. So we are doing more than our share for making sure that we're frugal, we're under in overtime, and in the last 3 years since I'm chief, we have actually brought over $150,000 in increased revenue and decreased overtime and spending by $150,000. That's a $300,000 savings to the city of Hazleton.
You know, Frank, it's interesting. You talk about psychiatrists, you talk about spirituality. You know, what sometimes I think people don't, I'm sure a lot of people don't think this way, but some people don't realize that these men and women have families. They go to work, they see a lot of things, they got a lot of calls, and you take your work home sometimes. It's troubling, you know, like these poor people, veterans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and no matter where they're served. We have no idea what, you know, what goes through their minds, what they've seen. And these poor police officers that come home, you know, they bring that to their families, and it's a social type thing as well. And that's why I think when I said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
And it's important to point out that not only the chaplaincy program, but the psychiatrists and psychologists involved,
Yep.
they're gratis. There is not a nickel spent on them by the city. These people that are involved are doing this for the good of the city and the good of the officers.
Look, I'm talking to Police Chief Frank DeAndrea, Hazleton Police Department, and like I said before in the beginning of the show, this applies to a lot of communities, what's happening. It's interesting, folks, how sometimes we look at different areas of what we should be really putting our investment in. You know, and when you see a couple of cops walking down the streets, or you see them walking in different areas, or their patrol cars around, you get a feeling that they're, you know, if anyone's going to do anything, they're going to think twice, and that's the perception. But that also comes with a budget, all right? And sometimes people don't think that way. Sometimes people think politically, and thinking politically is not good. It's not good. Thinking the right way and talking to various people, I think is the good thing. Senior citizens are fearful, no matter where you live. We could alleviate some of that if we had additional police enforcement. We come back, we'll continue our discussion on this special edition of the Sam Lesante Show with Police Chief Frank DeAndrea. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Special edition. Remember, you can watch all of our shows on ssptv.com 24/7, as well as the Sam Lesante shows that we have done in the last number of years. And my email is sam@ssptv.com. My guest today is Police Chief Frank DeAndrea. We talk about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I want to be nice, folks, particularly no matter where you live. If every once in a while you'd see a couple of police law enforcement walking down your streets in Hazleton, Alder Street, Diamond Avenue, the Heights, you know, Broad Street, Wyoming Street, and I'm sure the different streets that you have in Monterey City, Shenandoah, whatever, to see a couple cops, and all of a sudden it sends a message. In Hazleton right now we have surveillance cameras, which is fantastic. And so when we look, Frank, at the year of this year, you know, one of the things that I can't speak highly enough of the Pennsylvania State Police. Any police officer, Cunningham, Butler, Hazel, you know, you name it. I don't want to leave anybody out, because the Freeland, you know, borough, all of the police people, policemen or policewomen, who are out there giving their lives every day, because there's so many wackos out there. You know, when you leave your house in the morning, as you saw in New York City, you know, there's two men who left their families, and boom, some wacko comes up and ends their life. So you're putting your life at stake. So I can't say enough for the police, and we should support them. And that's one of the problems I think we have with the current mayor of New York City, but that's another story. Looking at 2015, and hopefully, you know, we will get the support that you need in the police department, because it's important, okay? What are you looking for?
Well, and I'd like to clarify one thing. It's not the support in the police department. It's the support for the police department. Because everybody in the police department is all swimming in the same direction. You know, we are all working as a team for the best and for the betterment of the city and what's in the best interest of the community. 2015 is going to again see an additional female officer on the rolls, fill-in that'll bring us back to 38 officers with the retirements, and several officers that are leaving to go to other agencies. We lost a detective, a narcotics detective, that went to the Attorney General's office. Huge asset for the city, big plus for the AG's office. We're talking about automation. You know, that's what allows us to do more with less. I'd love to have computers in the cars. We can't afford it. But with that, we now have a computer network that streamlines us doing our reporting. We're going to be doing our online reporting system will be up and running in 2015. It gives the public access to the police department online from your smartphone or from your home computer. You could report silly, and not to downplay crimes, but it's Halloween and somebody smashed your pumpkin. Okay, you can report that right online. You need to turn it into your insurance company because somebody broke into your car and stole the change out of the ashtray. You have no idea what time it happened. There's no witnesses. There's nobody injured. You could go online and report that. You'll automatically be generated a police report number. It saves you from having to get out of your fuzzy bunny slippers at 3 o'clock in the morning to come down to the police department. And it keeps the police able to continue to respond to the serious calls that, as you see, are on the rise in the community. You can always come to the police department. You'll always be able to call and have a cop respond. But for the public's portion that wants to be able to report things online, you can give us tips online. It will even be able to expand to report potholes, to report streetlights that are out. The sky's the limit, but the online reporting system will be up and running. You know, some of the things that I'd like to see, we're pushing through the chaplaincy program and our psychiatrist to be able to have more of an outreach to the community, to get involved. As you're well aware, I'm on the board of the Hazleton Integration Project, the community center. I donate of my time. A lot of my officers donate a lot of their time to the community. I'd like us to be able to be more involved as we can. The problem becomes we're stretching ourselves extremely thin.
And he just brought another classic example. We talk about educating people, informing people, and not one-sided, just basic information. Here you have the HIP program. They have taken young children, young people from, you know, all Spanish, white, Asian, etc., working together. These are kids that are taking them off the street, seeing another aspect of what life is all about, working together. As Joe Madden's and Bob Curry's dream is get these people working together so they're not going to be out there stealing and robbing and selling drugs, etc. So the more you educate, the better it is.
I say to everybody, I would rather meet children at the community center and play basketball with them or play chess with them or break bread with them or share stories with them than meet them in City Hall. Because if I could meet them there and they could learn that the cops are human and we interact, not only does that give them a better opinion as they grow up of law enforcement in the community,
Exactly, yeah.
but it keeps me from having to arrest them on the streets.
And Frank, they bring it home.
Right.
They bring that home to their parents, to their relatives, to their friends. They bring that home as what they're learning there.
And what that community center does for the community, one of the greatest things I could instill in my young children, my 7-year-old daughter, my 9-year-old son, we were there for Thanksmas, Joe Madden's Thanksmas at the community center. And to see my children excited to be able to serve food to the community and the drink cart and being able to give back. And I'm instilling that in them through the community center. That's what part of community policing. And so they're not only seeing the chief of police serving food and cooking and cleaning up. My children and all of our children are learning what it's important about being part of a community. So these are the things that I like to try and expand on in 2015 with the police department, with the community. It's community involvement. It's the help us help you. It's being out there more on the streets when we can. It's the fun fests. It's all of the community day that the city hosts, trying to get out there and get the public to embrace and understand who we are and what we do.
In the greater Hazleton area, I'm sure like in any other town, we have, we now have a very powerful, positive group. We have the Hazleton Alliance, developing greatly downtown. We have, the Angelo brothers who came and are continuing to pour millions of dollars here. We had the Haydens who continue to do that. We have the park that maybe will be, a museum, a park. There's all these great things, the positive things are happening. So people say it'll never be the way it is. Well, nothing will ever be the way it is. But we're instilling the positive look. And let's agree to disagree. Let's not be, getting these old timers, and I say old timers, I don't mean old, but people with old ideas, okay, from the old days, okay, and they carry them forward. We got to get rid of that, Frank.
I'm in total agreement. If I could stand up and salute the people that are responsible for this, I certainly would, because what we're doing for this community, shining it up, showing the good side of it, showing how wonderful it could be. I love coming downtown with my children and watching movies at the Markle. I love seeing the buildings that I grew up with as a kid being taken care of and being shined up, and it's a beautiful city to live in and to be involved in. My hat is off to them for supporting our community, and the police department will do our part.
And you are. Folks, I'm talking to Police Chief Frank DeAndrea, talking about a review of 2014. What does 2015 look like in terms of all these communities? All I can tell you, folks, is support your law enforcement. Support them. Whatever help they need, give them help. Okay, they're not there to hurt you. They're there to help you. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, special edition, folks. So we talk about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So let's talk about the Hazleton Police Department. The city of Hazleton right now requires 60 policemen, 60 cops. Okay, they have 38 with probably 3 or 4 of them that are on the sick list. Okay, so Frank, dealing with budgetary problems. I mean, everyone is trying to work whatever they can. They don't want to overtax anybody, but you have 38 police law enforcement right now. You need how many more? And the council said, look, we're going to give you a part-time. Okay, so let me look at what the Hazleton City Council are saying. They're saying to you, Frank, we're going to give you a part-time policeman. My first question is, I'm sure they discussed that with you.
Unfortunately, no.
They didn't discuss what you needed and what your requirements are?
What I need, I have often said, 10 more cops, 20 more cops, depending on where you read the statistics. Everybody knows I need cops. If the question is, did anybody ever come to me and sit down and ask, can you use part-time officers?
Yeah.
The answer is no. No one has ever discussed with me part-time officers.
Well, can you use them?
Absolutely not. And
Are
please,
you saying you cannot use part-time?
No. Right now, we have a sucking chest wound. Please don't hand me a Band-Aid for a scrape on my arm and tell me that it's going to help me. If you can't stop the bleeding, forget about the scratch that I have on my arm. Part-time officers are a would-be nice, not a have-to-have. Right now, the city is not at the level of being able to have part-timers to help. Here's why. If I take $100,000 of taxpayers' money and pay part-time officers, the city, the good people of this community, are going to expect more service. So when I send part-time officer to the burglary at your house, you've been burglarized, you've been victimized, you're violated, your wife's grandmother's heirlooms have been stolen. They're priceless to you because you could never replace your families forever. The police officer, looking very good in their uniform, takes their report and says, okay, Mr. Lesante, I'll follow up on this. Now, today's Monday, right? I'll follow up on this Thursday when I come back to work. Next Thursday. And you poop your knickers because you're looking at this, your wife screams hysterically, and you're like, I need service. Even according to the law, before you get back to work, Mr. Part-Time Officer, my heirlooms are going to be melted down at a pawn shop. Well, I'm not scheduled to work until next week on Thursday. So all of a sudden, the community will be outraged that they're not getting the service that they thought they just paid for. The most important thing is to understand this is not a police union issue. Do not let it be turned into the big bad union. It's not that at all. Because the fact of the matter is there's only one person in the city who could authorize and hire police officers, and that is the chief of police going in front of city council. I will never go in front of city council to request part-time officers because right now part-time officers will not solve our problem and they will only add to my overtime expenses. And worse than that, according to the current contract, I hire a part-timer, they have to be paid medical benefits for them and their family. That's not in the line item for the budget.
Frank, it's a shame we only have a minute left. I'm a little concerned and a little confused. We have a major investment in downtown Hazleton, as well as so many other people do, and we're very proud of that. I am very shocked, really, that the councilmen or councilwomen, whomever, who are presenting a budget and where they're talking about the police department, did not come to you, the chief of police, 28 years of law enforcement, and say, look, we want to present something, but we want your input.
Unfortunately,
Right.
that didn't happen.
That to me, and I don't care who it is. I like everyone is on council.
To turn a negative into a positive. Be blessed with the fact that council has found $103,000
Sure.
to hire another full-time officer.
All right. Frank, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we talk about education, folks. You know, this is not a political thing, folks. You know, I'm not siding with anyone. All I'm telling you is that the citizens in Hazleton and every community are concerned about their welfare. They're concerned about being protected. Support your law enforcement. There's no question about it. Hats off to everyone who puts a uniform on. Believe me when I tell you, with this crazy world we have today, they leave their families. They don't know whether they're going to come home. Pennsylvania State Police on those roads, they have no idea who they're going to encounter. Support them. Support any police law enforcement. And also, folks, give them the opportunity of knowing, listen to them. They're telling you what they need to protect you. We'll see you next time.